Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa shocks the world in Russia. So he reports Zambia to Vladimir Putin. So we're going to talk about the Hichilema SADC threat. I'm going to explain, bringing out all the details, and we're also going to look at the video where President ED is speaking to Putin, and also we're going to talk about the activities happening in Livingstone, Zambia, and also Nelson Chamisa and Hichilema, the president of Zambia, relationships. How do they relate to each other? Now, before we come back to the President ED video, let me take you to Zambia. We see this post by the US Embassy. They write, "We are pleased to announce that US Africa Command will open Office of Security Cooperation at the US Embassy in Zambia. Visiting AFRICOM Brigadier General Peter Bailey made the announcement during a meeting with His Excellency President Hichilema." That is the US Embassy Zambia making this post, right? Then we see them together. Now, what is Africa Command or US Africa Command, and what do they do? Now, this is according to Wikipedia. The United States Africa Command, US-FRICOM, and AFRICOM is one of the 11 unified combatant commands of the United States Department of Defense. Its responsibilities: it is responsible for US military operations, including fighting regional conflicts and maintaining military relations with 53 African nations. With 53 African nations, how many nations do we have in Africa? All right, so maintaining relations with 53 African countries. Now, recently, they held a land force summit where? In Victoria, in Livingstone, Zambia. Livingstone is that city where we find the Victoria Falls. If we go to the Google Maps, I'm just going to show you here. On Google Maps, I'm just going to zoom into Livingstone. It's next, right next to Zimbabwe. All right, this is Livingstone. Right there on the center of the screen, almost on the center of the screen. Let me zoom in even a little bit more. This is Livingstone here. Livingstone here and Victoria Falls here. That's Livingstone there. So what were they doing here? This is what they were doing. Military displays. They were displaying. Now, this was not a one-day summit. It took almost a week. Military demonstrations, as you can see right here. So these guys are supporting the Zambian military, or the Zambian military is supporting US Africa Command in these operations. They're getting weapons, getting training. And how have Zambians reacted to this, and what does this mean for the SADC region? So that is a military display right there. Now, U.S. position on Zimbabwe. Remember this video.
Here, and I want to tell our foreign adversaries, whether it's a Zimbabwe or a China, that the difference between us and you is that.
All right. So here we hear this guy talking about U.S. adversaries. Then he mentions Zimbabwe and China. Those were the days Floyd in the United States of America.
That officer who killed George Floyd.
George Floyd, not Floyd Mayweather.
I want to tell our foreign adversaries.
Right? So they are considering Zimbabwe as an adversary. Now we'll get to this message when he's speaking with Putin. Anyways, last year, we see Zimbabwe getting helicopters from Russia, right? When Zimbabwe gets helicopters from Russia, what does the United States of America do? We see them giving Zambia 4 military helicopters.
Seen here, and I want to tell our foreign adversaries, whether it's a Zimbabwe or a China, that the difference between us and you is that officer who killed.
So we see United States announces donation of helicopters to Zambia Air Force. Here again we see this. North Carolina National Guard welcomes Zambian partnership. North Carolina National Guard leader joined fellow U.S. military and Zambian leaders at a state partnership program signing ceremony. Livingstone, Zambia, April 26, 2024. The leaders were invited to the ceremony as part of the NCNG's expansion, joining the Republic of Zambia and the Republic of Malawi in their state partnership program. So remember, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi, at one point, they were one thing. It was Rhodesia and Nyasaland. Rhodesia and Nyasaland, it was one thing. I don't want to refer to it as a country, right? Later on, we'll see Putin giving President Mnangagwa another helicopter, 1 helicopter, and grain. The first helicopters that come, these are the helicopters.
Built helicopters were delivered to Harare at the handover ceremony presided over by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The helicopters will be used for air ambulances, air policing, and rescue missions.
Air ambulances, policing, and rescue missions, helicopters.
In case of disasters.
And also in case of natural disasters. And what does ED say here?
Zimbabwe and the region around us, in particular Mozambique and Malawi, are prone to cyclones. When these attack us because we don't have capacity, we try to beg from those countries who have capacity. Yes, of course, we have South Africa, our neighbor here. They have capacity, they come and help us. But today we stand tall with these helicopters, because when these cyclones strike us again. Look at this capacitation.
All right, it says, look at this capacitation. Now back to the Land Forces Summit. As you can see, the interaction. These are just short snippets. So we're seeing a lot of American military personnel here. It's almost 50-50 with those that look Zambian. That's the front stage. We're seeing the American flag there. Then we'll see here a Zambian Army General welcoming
to the 2024 Africa Land Forces Summit to be hosted here in Zambia in the beautiful city of Livingstone. Regional solutions to transnational problems is the theme for this year's summit.
Regional solutions to transnational problems is the theme. So here the guy is welcoming people who are going to be there. Regional solutions to transnational problems was the theme there. Now here we see ED coming from South Korea in a rush, going to Russia. Then we see this on the internet. So a lot of people have been receiving this video with resentment and indifference. So we're going to take a look at it and analyze it.
The Americans, they have not looked upon us. They think that we are too much inclined to the east. But we have no apologies at all. We feel we are better in relations with the people who also respect us, not the persons who look down upon us. So we are very happy to be here. And we are anxious to actually have our relations more comprehensive and consolidated between ourselves. Yes, we are a very advanced country, but there's a lot that we can learn from you. There's a lot that we can benefit from that relationship. And there's a lot that we can open for the Russian Federation to participate in our economy, especially in the mining sector and in agriculture. There's a lot that we can afford for you to participate. And in that process, the West will run away. You see, the West have just begun consolidating their power in Zambia. Our next neighbor. You know, there was a time when Zambia and Zimbabwe won. It was called Northern and Southern Rhodesia. It was won by the British, but they were now separate. And the Americans are consolidating their power in that country, both in terms of security and in terms of financial support to Zambia, to make sure that we feel lonely. But that will not change us, because we have taken a course which, as a people, that we feel we want to be independent, and we choose our friends ourselves. And besides, we are independent today because most of us in the leadership trained here during our war of liberation. We got our independence because we were supported by yourselves here, and you don't forget that history, and you stood by us. So, Mr. President, I am happy to be here.
And if opportunity avails later on, I mean, we may find time to chat and go into more detail as which areas we must focus in terms of supporting each other, and in terms of where we feel we need external support, more especially in the area of defense and security, as well as food security. In those areas we need to be supported. The mechanism.
He says, especially in the areas of,
in terms of where we feel we need external support, more especially in the area of defense and security.
More specifically, in the areas of defense and security,
as well as food security.
As well as in the food security.
In those areas we need to be supported. The mechanization of agriculture and so on. You can't go to the West. We have to come here because the West would want to see us down. They support our neighbors, Zambia and Malawi, very heavily. But in spite of that, Zimbabwe's economic growth is the fastest growing economy in the region, in spite of us being isolated by the Americans. So, Your Excellency, I'm very happy to be here.
All right. Let's take it again.
The relations just ended there. And thereafter, both the British and the Americans, they have not looked upon us. They think that we are too much inclined to the east.
The Americans and the British have not looked upon us. They think we're too much inclined to the east. Now, let us listen very carefully to the tonality that he uses. He changes spacing when he's changing the meaning.
But we have no apologies at all. We feel we are better in relations with.
Now he's using a pleading tone. He's pleading right here.
People also respect us, not persons who look.
We want people who also respect us, not people who look down upon us. This statement is also a bargaining statement to Putin, telling him indirectly, subliminally, don't look down upon us.
Down upon us. So we are very happy to be here. And
we are very happy to be here. So basically he's telling him, you respect us. So even if Putin didn't want to respect him, just by that statement,
we are anxious to actually have our relations more comprehensive and consolidated between ourselves.
And the pace that he is using, he is very, very quick. He knew what he wanted to say here. This is not Edie's usual pace in speaking.
Yes, you are a very advanced country, but there's a lot that we can learn from you. There's a lot that we can benefit from that relationship. And there's a lot
we can learn from you. There's a lot that we can benefit from that relationship.
That we can open for the Russian Federation to participate in oil.
There's a lot that we can open to the Russian Federation to participate. Now it's an offer. All right.
Economy, especially in the mining sector.
Especially in the mining sector.
And in agriculture.
And in agriculture.
There's a lot that we can afford for you to participate.
Why is he speaking fast? He's speaking fast because he wants to get to a certain point. So he has to prepare to prime the listener.
And in that process, the West will run away.
And in that process, the West will run away. He reduces pace. In that process, the West will run away. That is a joke there, but it doesn't mean what he's saying.
You see, the West have just begun consolidating.
The West have just begun consolidating
their power
in Zambia.
Our next neighbor.
Our next neighbor. Consolidating is gathering power.
Welcome to the 2024 Africa Land Forces Summit, to be hosted here in Zambia in the beautiful city of Livingstone. Regional solutions.
So again, we see the Land Forces Summit was held here in Livingstone, Zambia. Once again, this is the Google Maps. We see Zimbabwe, Zambia, and that is Livingstone. If we look at the width of the Victoria Falls here, we can estimate how many kilometers from Livingstone to Zimbabwe. It's less than it's almost 6 kilometers here, using the scale given on this map here. It's around 6 kilometers away. So we see US military operations there.
There was a time when Zambia and Zimbabwe won. It was called the Northern and Southern.
There was a time where Zimbabwe and Zambia were one. Now, relatability. He wants Putin to relate with this situation where Russia and Ukraine were one under the Soviet Union.
It was won by the British, but they were now separate. And the Americans are consolidating their power in that country, both in terms of security and in terms of financial support.
The Americans are consolidating their power both in terms of security and also in terms of financial.
To Zambia, to make sure that we feel lonely, but that will not change us because we have taken a course which, as a people, that
To make sure that we feel lonely, but that hasn't changed us.
we feel we want to be independent and we choose our friends ourselves. And besides, we are independent today because most of us
And besides, we're independent today because most of us were trained here.
in the leadership trained here during our war of liberation. We got our independence because we were supported by yourselves here, and you don't forget that history, and you stood by us. So, Mr. President, I am happy to be here, and if opportunity avails later on, I mean, we may find time to chat and go into more detail as which areas we must focus.
If an opportunity arises later on, we may find time to chat. Later on, what does he mean later on? Means he was in Russia. And these guys may find some time later on in that period, not later on in the future, maybe next month or next week. No, later on, that time where ED is in Russia.
In terms of supporting each other, and in terms of where we feel we need external support, more especially in the area of defense and security.
So here we're seeing that ED just arrived in Russia just like that, and he gets welcomed by Putin.
As well as the food security. In those areas we need to be supported. The mechanization of our agriculture and so on. You can't go to the West. We have to come here. Because
We can't go to the West, we have to come here. But he has been relating with Putin. Why is he mentioning this now? But we can't go to the West. He's speaking to Putin. At the same time, he's speaking to the world.
the West would want to see us down. They support our neighbors.
Now, the response that this is getting from Zimbabweans and the response that this is getting now the response that this is getting from Zimbabweans and the response that this is getting from other Africans are two different responses. A lot of Zimbabweans on social media are receiving this with indifference, but Africans are worried of the idea of a US military base in Zambia. Even Zambians themselves, they are worried. Remember, Hichilema was an opposition leader before becoming the president of Zambia. Before him was Edgar Lungu. Now, there is speculation that Edgar Lungu wants to run again for presidency. Remember, before Hichilema became the president of Zambia, he ran at least 5 times. Then on the 6th time, he won. And during that time, he was helped by a UK group called SABI Strategy Group. Now, this SABI Strategy Group is a group that provides comprehensive research-driven campaigns and strategic communications support to international corporations, political leaders, family offices, and advocacy groups around the world. Now, this is according to their website, sabistrategy.com, right? Again, we see here one of their partners here, Jonathan Mox, Director, SABI Strategy Group. Contributions, Zambia elections, and this is dated 10/08/2021. All right, so this reads, this election period has certainly seen an even playing field. Zambia is one of the fastest declining democracies globally. Arbitrary arrests and detentions without